everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Apex 4-in-1 podcast. Paul's going to laugh in the middle of my intro. This is the Apex 4-in-1 podcast. For this episode, is going to be known as the Nico Hulkenberg fan club. We are recapping everything we can think of about the Silverstone Formula One Grand Prix. Was it British Grand Prix is the official title? Great race. It was a fun one. Had changeable conditions, which makes any race just very interesting. It's going to change up the positions. Not who you expect to be on podiums are going to be on podiums. Those who you think are going to finish the race are definitely out. People you love to hate, Lance Stroll particularly, did really well thanks to my prediction. So great one to talk about. We don't have anything going into next week since we've got the summer break coming up. So this will be a little bit shorter than usual, but we are going to try to sprinkle in a new little segment we want to add where we talk more about technical stuff. Today we may talk about some tires. Next time we may talk about some aero. We're going to try to sprinkle in a little bit more in-depth technical stuff, maybe rules, regulations, whatever we think of. We're just going to try to be a little bit more educational, not only for us to learn, because we're going to have to research these topics, but also to try to give y'all just a little bit more information than what we have at the current. So hope you stick with it and bear with us while we try to learn some of that stuff as well. First off, we'll kick it off to Paul. What did you think of this weekend's race?
Listen, it was definitely a fun race. It definitely kept you on the edge of your seat the whole time. You truly never know what's going to happen with rain, and I think we clearly saw that. Much like you said, the drivers you hate did great. The drivers you love, to either fault of their own or no fault of their own, ended up having to DNF, and it was just a whole morning of just playing chess and trying to figure out what to do at the what the right timing is. Overall, it was a fun race, and I think as an F1 fan, you can't ask for more.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to put it. The chess match, especially this race. With all the safety cars and virtual safety cars and all the mess with the weather, it almost felt more like a chess match when we only got maybe a fourth of our time was spent behind a safety car. So it's definitely a little bit different than your average Grand Prix. But Meredith, what do you think?
That this is one where strategy mattered more than most because of the chess game. I always like to think about rain being the great equalizer. Like anything that you think you know based on free practice and qualifying and how a car has been performing, it all changes with that rain. And I think there was rain early on this morning and then it cleared up and it looked like for the start, things were going to be pretty clear. And then pretty quickly we saw things shift. So I think everything you think you know, when there's rain predicted, you're done. So I think relying on their teams and communication and strategy and tire strategy, it mattered so much more today. Obviously, being a Lando girly, I am over the moon. I was crying all morning. I couldn't get it together. I was so excited. And the fact that I watched this race in public and was crying in public, I had no shame about it. I was over the moon. There was an interview that he did that he said, I would trade multiple wins at other Grand Prix for one Silverstone win. So this one meant a lot. It was the first with the Lando grandstands. This was huge for him. And, I know that we all wanted Lewis to do well. We wanted that Lewis streak to continue. And I think, him coming in P4, I felt like that was really good for him, given how he's been driving with that car. He knows this track better than anyone. And I think that him being able to pull out a P4, we would have all loved for it to be a podium for Lewis. But I think we all love that Nico Hulkenberg got a podium today. First podium in a 15-year career. This is insane. I am over the moon. I'm neon green for this week. Congratulations to him. I thought it was a really exciting race. Given that we only had a small percentage of the full race, I'm over the moon with what we saw, the battles on tracks, the overtakes. There were some really great moments of really competitive driving in very dangerous conditions that I think showed a lot of skill. And I think there was a lot of strong team communication today. So I couldn't have asked for anything more today.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. We have to talk about Nico Hulkenberg's great race today. Obviously was helped out a lot by strategy at the right times and the conditions, but the team made the right decisions, and that's really all that matters at the end of the day. So glad Nico could pick that up. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he had the longest drought, I guess, from race starts to no podiums.
239
race starts
before his first
and I think
podium.
that was the longest.
Yeah.
Did y'all see the video I sent you of his daughter Jenny celebrating?
Amazing.
I was and it was funny, 15 laps to the end of the race, I sent my friend Lori a text message that I was I love Lewis so much. But now more than once I saw Lewis do that little slip up, I was now more than ever, I want Nico I want this podium for Nico. I want this for his wife. I want this for his kids who have stuck by him for 15 years as he has persevered in his career. I'm
Yeah, I
ecstatic for
think
him.
that
Well, I just think he's a driver that everyone loves. He doesn't piss anyone off. He's there. He's always got a smile on his face. How do you not root for him? Even if you're not a Sauber fan or whatever teams he's been on for 239 starts, he's just that guy that just everyone loves. So good for him. I'm happy that, because let's face it, he's towards the end of his career. He's got maybe a couple more years left. So at least he can, finish his career in a couple years saying he got a podium in Silverstone, which arguably is one of the best races that F1 calendar has. So kudos to him. Great for him. I'm hoping it's celebrated. I thought even the trophy was pretty cool. The Lego
The
trophy.
Lego trophies were really cool, but I did see
Yeah.
something that was like, imagine it's your first podium in 15 years of F1 racing and you get a Lego
Yeah,
trophy.
I saw
I
that.
thought that was pretty
But
funny.
it's still a very iconic trophy. Yeah, good for him. I'm happy. I don't think you'll find anyone that's a good F1 fan that's going to talk crap about
no,
this
and you
one.
could
But let's talk about the last multiple races. Like, it's not just Silverstone, the last 4 races from Nico. He's been in the points the last 4 races. I mean, we're talking Barcelona, Canada, double points for stake in Austria, now podium. Like, this is such momentum for them. This is what they needed. And we know that they have the transition year to Audi for next year. But this is like, what an incredible story that I don't think is being talked about enough is this early, not even halfway through the season shift for stake. This is an incredible amount of momentum. The points that they've accumulated in the last 4 races, a double podium, their first double podium. This is a massive accomplishment, and I think it speaks to like how powerful it is to have an experienced driver in that seat, giving feedback on the car. And yeah, people can say what they want about Nico Hulkenberg's career, having never had a podium until now. Hi, puppy. I think this is the power of having that experienced driver on a team, giving feedback in the car. The upgrades are working, and what an incredible streak of 4 races for stake. Like,
yeah,
round of
and
applause
you
for
could see
them.
what it meant for that team. If you had listened to any of the stuff going on after the race during the podium celebrations and Parc Ferme, you would have thought that they won a world championship. It just meant that much to that team. They were so loud, so enthusiastic, so excited for their man to have gotten on the podium. That's a huge gap from where they were last year. Last year they were lucky to even finish races, let alone get points. Really just struggling to even keep on the lead lap sometimes, and the early parts of the last season. So to see that Stake Sauber team actually kind of pick up some momentum with some of that new money coming in and with this transition coming up, the momentum they have going into next year is going to be huge. We've already seen the last 4 races with some consistent point finishes. It's only time will tell, but it seems like the car's there. It seems like the drivers are decent. You've got guys that are in the right spots right now. So we'll see. You got to remember, you got Jonathan Wheatley, you've got Matteo Binotto over there. So there is a lot of good leadership in that lime green car. So we'll see how the rest of the season does. But with the midfield looking the way it is, there's no telling how many more points that Stake Sauber team can pick up. I really appreciated. I know I texted you guys the quote when they did the interviews with the podium finishers, and Oscar obviously had the roughest of the days, other than maybe some guys that didn't get the finish. But of your finishers, I mean, that was a win that Oscar really had in his pocket that got kind of taken away from him, whether you believe it was by his own actions or the FIA's actions. Either way, it was a win that he should have had that was ultimately not given to him. But I did appreciate that he immediately recognized that that was a huge deal for Nico. And he said that even though he appreciated that win. But my favorite quote from him was he still loves Silverstone even if he doesn't love it today. And I thought that was really appropriate for him, and a mature answer. I'm sure he could have said anything he wanted to right there. He could
Absolutely.
have, gone against the FIA and said, blah, blah, Max did this, George did that, whatever. At the end of the day, he took it on the chin. He congratulated a competitor and still was able to thank the fans and appreciate the track. And I just thought that was very mature from a guy who's really only had 2 years in Formula One. So that's impressive to me.
Agreed. I also thought another really strong post-race interview was Nico Hulkenberg's. He acknowledged the efforts of Lewis Hamilton and what it meant for Lewis Hamilton for it to be his home race. And in his post-race interview, he said, I know a lot of fans wanted this to be Lewis up here today. And he said, but I wanted it to be me. And I loved that because we know fans wanted it to be Lewis. We all know that we wanted that story to continue, but I thought it was really great of Nico to acknowledge that, like, hey, I get it. I know you all wanted to see Lewis on this podium, but it means so much to me. So I thought both of them had really great post-race interviews. I also thought Lando was very humble and respectful in his. He just talked about what it meant for him, his childhood dream. I really appreciated that neither Lando nor Oscar got into the commentary about the FIA and what the other driver's role played in that scenario. And I think in the past they have. So I appreciated that neither Lando nor Oscar in their post-race interviews made any type of commentary about who should have done what with the McLaren situation. So I thought all post-race interviews were great today.
Yeah, so I think we got to talk about the McLaren situation. We saw a race or two ago. I guess it was the last race. George made a very similar move while he was leading with Max, obviously in second. And I believe that they had said that the brake pressure was 30 psi, if I remember Martin Brundle's little analysis there. Obviously, we don't know the telemetry yet on what Oscar did, but was it?
60,
Oh, was it? Is
60
okay. So it
brake
was
change.
double. So it's double what George did. So
Double.
if we talked about it and we were kind of borderline there on George's situation there on Max, but if it's going to be double and that's what the stewards decided is kind of the limit, then there's really no argument that a 10-second penalty was probably warranted. It may not be what he wanted, but I don't see the benefit either of making that move when he made it. I think that it's something that Oscar will look back on and kind of regret the way that went down. But he can't argue the penalty. I don't believe that he has any place to.
No.
If the team was gonna go against it and try to argue with the FIA and appeal the situation, then that's up for the team to do. But I don't think that in retrospect that Oscar's going to be able to look at that one and think that that's anyone's fault but his own.
Agreed. I don't think they have any grounds to stand on. The math is the math.
The telemetry is the data.
There's a reason we have the technology we have that measures what we have. Is 60 psi change. It was very clear. I mean, even watching it happen, I was like, oh. Yes. Oscar, he is such a strong, steadfast driver. So I was shocked to see that kind of move happen, and Max clocked it immediately. And it was like he accelerated so fast and then slammed on his brakes. And I was confused. And even in the video I took of it happening, you see Max lunge past, and on the ticker tape thing, it's like Max moved up to 1. And I was like, what's Max doing? He can't overtake. And I'm like, watch the replay. I'm like, that's coming down the pipeline. And I hate it because, being a McLaren girl, I don't want that penalty for Oscar. But, I hope he reviews it and just learns from it, because I do think it was a fair penalty.
Did you see Zach Brown's comments?
And I think
during the race, every weekend, a team principal is kind of given the right to go on television and speak with the commentators. Mm-hmm. So they had Zach Brown, of course, on this weekend's, and they were talking to him right after the thing went down. And I think it was telling to me that Zach Brown wasn't immediately, because he's usually the guy that's like, nope, we're appealing it. We don't like the situation. We think this is wrong. We're going to appeal. But it was very telling that he was like, well, we're going to have a conversation and see what we think. It was immediately as defeatist to me. So I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but I thought that Zach, his just mindset and well, we got to have a conversation and see if we want to do. Immediately, I was like, oh, nope, they're done. They already accepted that's a penalty.
Yeah, I think at the heat of the moment, sorry, Meredith, at the heat of the moment, I think we all got upset and we're like, too much. But at the end of the day, cooler heads prevail here. And I think it was a warranted. But you have to give him credit. I like that Oscar is willing to ride with his elbows out with Max. I think for many times we see that Max, the prestige that he's in, he punks out other drivers. Lando, is big one. And I think I like that Oscar's like, no, bro, you want to go? I'll play dirty too. And this is one that it didn't work. And thankfully for him, Max ended up spinning out later on in the race, and that pretty much ruined it for him. I love that. Lando is driving his elbows out and saying, come at me, bro. And much like
you think that move that Oscar did, and maybe the way that Max perceived it, do you think that played into his spin in the next corner?
Maybe, but I think we've seen Max being, calm, cool in these situations where he gets angry. So maybe it was just one of those conditions were that bad. Even before that, we saw that he was really having a hard time with that rear of that car.
Yeah.
So
he was very vocal about it too. He came on. I mean, not even 30 seconds after he came on that radio, and he said, "We have to pit next lap. I have to change tires. I have no grip." That's when he slipped and he fell 8 grid positions. That's a massive spin out he had. I'm really glad that he was able to keep the car on track.
It took him off the podium.
I do think that there must be that little mental, I mean, these are high performance athletes, real sweat, but I think that there has to be a little mental something that clicks, whether it's like a little bit of anger or a little bit of something when you see someone, like, I don't know what else, like a flag penalty flag on the play here, right? When Max reports that, there has to be some little something inside you that gets frustrated as a driver until you know what the result is. It's not an immediate penalty. FIA has to investigate. So there is probably a little something in these drivers that when they note something and they want something investigated, there's that lag time, and there has to be a little something chewing inside them that I would imagine it's near impossible for them to not lose some ounce of focus. I don't think that was what this was, though. His tires were gone. He was vocal about it within that lap of him saying that's when the spin out happened. But I would imagine that in any other circumstance, dry, tires are good, a situation like that, if the weather elements were gone and he was on good tires, I would then maybe say, hey, was that a little mental slip up?
But if we know anything about this, Max never forgets.
Never.
This story is far from over. It might not be next race, it might not be the race after that, but you can very well believe that Max will come back at Oscar with some sort of sly move, and it's just going to be like, well, payback, buddy. So I cannot wait to see where this unfolds. We've seen it. He'll do it to his own teammate if he thinks he's been
100%.
Yeah.
Like
wronged by his own
Yuki would be
teammate.
up in the top battling him, Paul.
Yeah. So, hey, I can't wait to see how this unfolds.
So while on the
This is a tactic that Max has done in the past. Like when safety cars are ending and he's at the front of the pack, like this is a tactic he's done, a little speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. Like and he's gotten penalties for this before. And so, it's like you said, like Max always gets his revenge. He always gets his payback, but he's not a novice to this. He's not a novice to this strategy of, well, I'm going to speed up and then slow down. Like there are tactics. Like we said, tactics made a huge play even throughout this weekend. Free practice, Max was talking about how shit his car was. Even in the early qualifying Q1, Q2, he was talking about how his car had no grip. He hated it. And then he comes out and he throws up that insane lap in Q3. Like Max plays the game too. So I think, players going to play, right? So
Absolutely.
I think maybe there is some mutual respect that Max can have for Oscar showing this side of his driving. I like it. We always think of Oscar being like this little quiet, timid guy, and I really like seeing this side of him. So it's been a lot of fun to watch him shift into this type of driver. But I do think I too am excited, Paul, to see like, okay, well, come Spa, another race that is like, historic for racing conditions, craze, like what could happen in Spa with Max and Oscar.
Yeah, I think only time will tell. I think, like we said, the season's far from over. This is like pretty much the halfway point with the summer break. So this is kind of a time to reset and refigure out where you want to be in this season. So I think some teams will drop off. Some teams will make drivers changes. We'll see maybe Alpine maybe dropping Colapinto. We just don't know yet. So I think several things will change, but I think one thing's for sure, that there will be quite a decent battle up on the top of the standings. Top five all kind of are right in there. Max, Lando, Oscar. Even the Ferraris have looked a little bit more racy. So that, never know if Charles or Lewis may be able to take a couple more points and be competitive. So, but I think we got to talk about the other side of this race this weekend was quite a few DNFs and then incidents on track that we have to discuss. Most of them are involving our rookie drivers, which isn't necessarily to be unexpected with the really difficult conditions.
All of our DNFs are rookies.
Well, some of them were caused by more veteran drivers, I think, particularly lap one incident. I don't necessarily think that was Ocon's fault, nor do I think that was Liam's fault. I actually put the blame more so on Yuki, kind of taking that inside and really giving nowhere to go for Ocon, and then just causing the
I thought that was a
racing
true
incident.
racing
Yep.
incident. That is
That's
just
a lap
an incident.
corner one. That's
Yes.
just that happens every single race, and nobody would bat an eye. And there's a reason that those are looked at through a different lens than, say, another incident later on. I'll say my favorite incident was the Haas on Haas damage with the perfect pirouette.
As you
Just
called it.
synchronized swimming across the infield. I loved it. That was my personal favorite incident. It was beautiful. I'm sure
You couldn't have asked for a better pirouette.
that slow-mo
You couldn't do that if you scripted it.
The slow-mo.
is perfect.
Like that will be up on our TikTok after we record today. I will post the Haas pirouette. It's so
It was beautiful.
good.
It was beautiful. I loved it quite a bit.
But I ask you this, Josh and Meredith. Do we think this race should have been red flagged at some point? Especially looking at the incident with Isaac and Kimmy. Visibility was damn near almost zero at some of the spots. And I get the argument with water displacement and the cars and moving it out of the way. But on a safety subject alone, I feel like it should have been red flag. We wasted endless laps just going in circles, going down the track. I mean, nothing was happening. Quarter of that race was
So I
gone.
think that there's two parts of this that I land on, right? I'll say the first more optimistic part of me is like, yeah, let's red flag the race. We saved the racing laps. For those who don't know, Formula One cars cannot be refueled in the pit lane. They're set at the beginning of the race with a certain amount of fuel. And fuel cannot be added unless the car is in the garage. So that eliminates the ability to like refuel. So every time that a safety car lap happens, it's another lap that's taken off of the tally. What Paul's referencing is every time that we went to a safety car, those laps were ticking down and ticking down and ticking down, and we really were losing out on what could have been a very good potential racing that we were missing out. I will say from a safety standpoint, the FIA, I think, or the race director, did a good job early and making that first safety car when it was really, really raining. It's more of a visibility issue.
Like lap 7.
Right. And they did a great job of recognizing that and going ahead and neutralizing the race and allowing it to continue under the safety car. So there's two parts to why they would do that. First is to, like we were talking about, to displace some of the water. Those cars move a lot of water. It's a great way to get the dry line going in that track and to get back to racing. If you know the forecast is going to ease up in a few minutes, the rain's going to become less, and then you can kind of dry the track at the same time. Perfect. The other thing that they do is they use the feedback from the safety car driver to determine whether or not the race should continue or should go to a red flag. So obviously the safety car driver, his name will come to me in a minute, but he's been doing this. He's been the safety car driver for Formula One for like 30 years. So he's a very knowledgeable guy. They respect his feedback quite a bit. If he had felt that the track was not drivable and was not safe to be driven under the conditions that were present, he would have given that feedback and the race would have been neutralized. So I do think that there are protocols in place to make sure it is as safe as possible. I think at some point you've got to let the cars drive. You have to let the drivers show their skills. We've seen these races get neutralized on a red flag before. I don't think they're scared to do it. So I think that if the feedback was and the belief was there that the race should be red flag, I don't think they would have hesitated. So I think that there's something to be said for the protocols that are in place. I think are in the driver's best interest. So I personally don't think that the race should have been red flag. I hate that we lost all those laps, and I hate that we missed out on maybe some of the racing that we could have had. But at the same time, I don't think it was dangerous.
Agreed. I also think the duration of the weather that's moving through at the time matters. You know, when you hear on the team radios, hey, we've got weather predicted coming in about 5 minutes and we see it lasting about 10 minutes, that's different than we've got weather coming in and we see it lasting the next 50 minutes. Like, I think that duration really makes a difference. So to me, I'm in the same boat as Josh. I was glad it was yellow flag, not red flag, so that the racing could continue. There were no periods of time where the racing lasted longer than 10 to 12-ish minutes. I mean, where the rain lasted longer than 10 to 12 minutes. So I was happy that they were able to continue racing. I also just think of historically, like Brazil is a track where we see a lot of rain over at Interlagos. And I think, even 2024 Brazil race had way more rain than this did, and they carried on with racing. And so I think for me, it's a balance of like learning about what the FIA is saying and the safety car driver is saying, and also thinking about historical races where they've been able to continue to drive safely and successfully and complete races. Even if it doesn't mean that we're getting the high stakes racing that we love in Formula One, we're still able to see some form of racing and it not have these hour long rain delays.
Yes. Yeah, makes sense.
I think with the incident with Isaac and Kimmy, I think it's almost twofold. I think one, I mean, the visibility, of course, is in play there, but it's also not a section of track that you would expect to find a car driving that slow in front of you, right? That's a extremely fast high-speed corner. It's typically taken in dry conditions flat out. It's one of the most famous corners. I mean, if anyone's seen the replays of Max and Lewis in 2021, when Lewis basically took Max out and sent him into the barriers at like 200 miles an hour. That's the same corner. It's a very, very, very high speed corner. It's odd to see Kimi Antonelli going so slow through there. I don't know if he had a slip earlier on. I'm not sure what led him in that position. Between Isaac's pace going down the old pit straight and a slow-moving car, I just don't think that either of them really had a chance. I don't think the stewards were really concerned about it either because I don't think he got a penalty for that one. I think they were just trying to racing. Yeah,
No.
so
No,
that's
he
just a
didn't.
racing incident. It's unfortunate, but it's just part of it. It led to Kimi's car being retired because the diffuser was completely destroyed. It was off the car, so the downforce of that car was severely compromised, and especially in the wet conditions, You need every bit of downforce you can get to stick to the ground. So after that, it was too dangerous to leave Kimi out there, I think. And I imagine that was probably the reasoning for retiring that car. So that was unfortunate, but I don't necessarily think that was.
Hey, I have a question
Yeah.
for you, Josh. Like you're more our resident tire expert on the podcast, and I was interested at like right between the formation lap and the start of the
Mhm.
race. I was interested to see the tire selection, and like so much changed
Yeah.
so quickly after that formation lap. What were your thoughts on the tire selections at the beginning of race? Like what were kind of your thoughts given that it had been wet, was going to dry out, going to get wet again? Everybody knew we had
Right.
weather predicted pretty quickly. What were your thoughts on the tire selections given the track
So what I thought
conditions?
was interesting was watching throughout the morning. It had rained several times on and off through the broadcast of the pre-race. So the race obviously was gonna start in kind of like that weird place. Is it wet? Is it dry? The sun's out, but it was raining 10 minutes ago. How risky do we want to be? So even up to a minute and a half before the cars were going out to the formation lap, I mean, you had rain on the forecast. So I think it was really just up to the teams to decide how risky they wanted to be and when they thought that the rain was going to come, because either way you're going to have to make a stop, right? One half of the grid's going to say, I'm going to start on the intermediates. If the track dries, I'll stop, I'll put the hards on, we'll continue on. Another side of the grid's going to say, well, I'll just start on the softs, or whatever I want to, probably the softs. If I start on those, I can get them warmed up. I can probably get through a damp track. If it starts to rain, I'll come in and make my stop. So I think you saw two of those strategies play out. It worked for some, it didn't for others. I don't think there was really a right answer either way through the beginning. You saw teams split cars. We saw Ferrari do it with Lewis and Charles. They left Lewis on the inters and they left Charles on the dry tires. So I wonder how much.
That was a
I agree, it was a
mistake.
complete mistake. But I do wonder how much input from the drivers do they really take in consideration. They say, hey, we see
Right.
rain in 10 minutes. Would you rather?
Based on the last few races, they don't listen to
Well,
their
and
drivers
and
for
that's yeah, and that's a
shit.
different conversation too. But I get from a team standpoint and a strategy standpoint, you're trying to limit your damage. You 50-50. You're going to work one way or is it going to work the other? So if I can put one car on each strategy, first of all, that eliminates me having to pick one or the other later on and trying to double stack like we saw McLaren had to do, which is extremely risky. We saw Lando lose a place at the time due to the double stack. So it's
That
right.
5 second pit stop was
And that right there is why
gut-wrenching.
teams try to
Yeah.
avoid that.
And he lost
They
it
lost
to
it to
Max, like
Max.
he'd just gotten that
And so you
lead.
take away what it was a great overtake and you lose it in the pit straight because you have a 5 second pit stop that may not have happened had you not been double stacked. So you eliminate that issue by having your two drivers on different strategies. You can kind of give them space from each other to both race a good race while not having to compromise each other's races because of a strategy decision. So I understand why they did that. But with this race particularly, you never knew when it's going to rain. The track was drying out slow. The sun came out, then it dried out faster. Even towards it very rarely at the end of a race do you see every team on the top 5-6 come in for a pit stop with 5 laps remaining. Right, that's a wild place to be in. But every team had to do it because the way that those tires degraded and the way that that track was drying out. So it's just I would not want to be a strategist on a pit wall on a race like today, and that's I'm sure why they earn the big money they make, because that's a lot of pressure, a lot of consequence riding on the decisions you're making, and based on as much information as you can get, but you can't know what the weather's going to do. You can't know how that track's going to perform. You can't know. A driver went off in a corner and knocked a bunch of gravel on track. Now you've got gravel and wet, and you're going to lose some traction. So it's just that's a tricky race. So I applaud that the strategists, and the feedback they're able to give the drivers and vice versa from the track, because the strategists are making decisions. They're not the ones driving the car. They don't really know how slick it is. They can look at the times and see like, okay, I know my cutoff time or my changeover time is going to be, I saw at one point it was going to be like a minute and 30 seconds. Well, the track may feel way more dry at a minute 32 second lap, and the driver may say, okay, I feel like I can do it. But then you saw guys like George Russell come in, and he said that he felt like he could handle the dry tires. Well, he got on them.
Survey
Yeah,
says
and
you're
then he started
wrong.
slipping, sliding around like it was, still piss pouring rain outside. It's
I love
tough.
his engineer's comment though. Like, I'm brave, but I'm
Yeah.
not suicidal.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Yeah.
no, I think we can do it. I think we can do it. And
Radio
Yeah,
of the
that was
day.
hey man, sure we can, but it's probably not a good idea. And he was like, no, it's a good idea. Let's do it. So yeah, it's at what point do you just? I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's any wrong answers here. I thought the bravest move of the day, I thought, was putting Lance Stroll on the soft tires that early in that first stint and letting him just kind of pick
Yeah.
up some time. That was the best move of the day, I thought. I'd have to watch again to see if I missed anything towards the end.
Oh, I'm wholehearted. Like whatever Nico and Lance Stroll's strategy was
Yep.
today, They
Nailed it.
executed with perfection, picking up the steam early on when they could, knowing damn well there was going to be another safety car likely with the rain that was moving in. I think that was genius on both of them. And I was also wondering, thinking about the amount of rookies we have on the grid and the amount of, that feedback from drivers to teams about the tire conditions and track conditions is so critical. This is where having those rookies makes it really challenging because they're not as familiar with how that car feels on that track. These seasoned drivers have driven these Formula One cars on these tracks, know what it should feel like. And so I do think this is where having rookies in those seats is a disadvantage because maybe they can't give as accurate of feedback as those seasoned veteran drivers are. So I think that it's like some nailed the strategy, like you said. Some just had to do a coin toss and say, let's pick one, let's try one and see what happened. But the ones who did it right, like Stake and like Aston Martin with Lance, they did it right and they did it well. I even think Williams with Alex Albon did well. I mean, like he fought his way up through the race. He was consistent. And Williams were kind of one that I was watching out that like there wasn't a ton of coverage on. Nobody was really commenting on them. I was wondering where they were going to be this entire time. So seeing Alex Albon finish in the points and, up there, I was really excited to see Alex back up in the points and see him be able to fight through all that and pick up some points again.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing about watching a regular TV broadcast is you may not be able to see every team and every driver at every point in time. So it's sometimes difficult for especially a fan of a particular team if you're not leading a race, or sometimes if you are, to see your favorite driver, favorite team, and how they're performing. So a lot of times you've got to dig into the telemetry or watch some the driver onboards to really know where teams are. I guess that's tough to do from a broadcasting perspective. You don't want to just show a bunch of back markers and where they're at.
Right.
But they do that sometimes when like today, McLaren was not featured very much because they were 30, 40 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. And we were more focused on those battles for third, fourth, and fifth. And sometimes it's the guys up front, sometimes the guys up in the back that kind of get shafted from the TV viewership or TV airtime. But I guess that's part of broadcasting a event that spans several miles of a racetrack. So it's unfortunate.
It also made me be like, this is why I want to be watching it on my F1 TV
Right.
subscription, not through ESPN, because like we've been watching up at the country club and it's fun because it's like we've got people on the patio. It's a fun environment, but like where we're watching it, I was like, my gosh, I wish I would have screencasted my F1 TV app instead and been able to do like a split view with a couple of driver onboards to be able to watch some different angles because like you said, when it's just the main broadcast of like the Sky Sports or ESPN, you do miss a lot of other stuff that's happening. So I'm like, I got to figure out how to be able to screencast up there.
Yeah, that's how I watched the end of the race. I had Lewis's onboard camera on my phone and the ESPN on the big TV. And it was nice to get that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in races like this, like the weather conditions. I'm like, that's why I love Rush so much, right? Like I think about like that camera angle in Rush where it's the weather. It's just that from the car viewpoint driving in the rain. I'm like, that driver on board to me, especially in weather conditions, is even more impressive. Like I love that. So I'm like, I got to get that figured out before Spa for sure.
Paul and I talked about this last year after Brazil. Watching some of the driver onboards in the conditions like that, if you have not yet been able to do that, just find you something on YouTube, or if you have F1 TV, please go pick a driver, watch the onboards. To see the conditions and the visibility of what those guys are dealing with is unbelievable. And the fact that they're able to drive those cars to the skill level and to the ability that they can, it's beyond words. Because imagine
and still being able to make split-second decisions.
Yes.
And breaking points, and I mean, it's just truly when you break it down, it's an incredible.
And the thing
feat.
is, like your road car will hydroplane at 40 miles an hour, and you've got tires with grooves on them, right? So especially when these guys are driving these dry tires on the wet conditions, they're relying completely on the downforce of that car to just keep planted. If they didn't have that, I mean, that car would be sliding all over the place. It's unbelievable to see. They're doing 100 mile an hour into a corner, sliding. You can see that back into that car. You saw Max several times. He was complaining about the rear of that car. He's out there. They said several times Martin Brundle was like, yeah, he looks like a rally driver out there driving this Formula One car. So it's unbelievable. If you have not yet done it, please go watch some onboards of these drivers in these wet conditions. It's nuts. It's beyond words. You have to experience it.
And I think that's why we love this sport so much. It's just all those variables, and especially in the rain, true talent and just pure racing talent really comes out. And rain is truly that true equalizer when it comes to racing, and that's why we love it. That's why we keep coming back for more week after
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
I'm ready to get hurt again
Oh
every
yeah.
day. Okay, guys, somebody who we haven't talked about, Pierre Gasly. Like, he was in P5 for most of the race,
Yeah,
finished in P6. Like, what is it with Alpine and rain? We had the Alpine double podium in Brazil last year after all the wet and the rain. Like, maybe Alpine and the rain have this like secret low-key backhouse deal that we don't know about. But I
much like
mean,
Stroll in the
Yeah.
rain.
Right.
yeah, it's like I was so impressed with Pierre this whole time. Like, I looked up and I was like, Pierre, what are you doing here? You know, like, and he had a really great qualifying too. But I was just like, he drove incredible today, and he
And
deserved that. And watching him and Lewis
Yes.
battle, I was like, why do I low key want to root for Pierre right now?
And then we saw that Mercedes George, he
Yeah,
couldn't
couldn't do
couldn't
it.
get by
Nope.
him, could not get by him. It was just shocking because
He said, not
you
today. Don't give a shit that it's your home race.
you figured Mercedes would be a little bit better, and especially George, but yeah,
That's what we were talking about before you hopped on, Paul. Josh and I were really surprised by how not strong the Mercedes looked, and I was quite surprised. Like, this is cooler temperatures, home track. Like, I anticipated Mercedes doing well this weekend, so I was quite surprised.
George was practically not even there. I mean, they briefly talked about him when he had that overtake on Lewis there when Lewis kind of lost it, and then that was really the only time he was featured and pretty much was non-existent.
I
It
mean,
just
early on in the race, he came on the radio and he jinxed himself. He was like, I'm really strong here. Yeah, I'm really fast here. Yeah, well, that's the last time you're going to be fast today,
Yeah,
George.
Mercedes, I
yeah.
thought would have done quite a bit better. I mean, they're a much better car in the cooler conditions. We saw them win last year with a car that was arguably much worse than the one that we see this year. So I really thought that Mercedes was going to be able to pick up some points, but I do think they were hampered significantly by some the strategy decisions at the beginning of the race that kept them down the order with some early pit stops. I thought they were kind of off the back foot for the majority of the race, and Kimi had the unfortunate shunt with Isaac that by no fault of his own ended his race. So I think that's one that Mercedes will just kind of chalk up to, maybe a bad strategy decision. Maybe it's just luck of the draw. They just, couldn't pick up the points this weekend. But with Alpine,
Y'all look at your
Yeah.
phones real quick because this picture I snagged during the ESPN
Yes.
Oh yeah,
broadcast is how
Toto.
every this is credit to ESPN.
Yeah.
This is
Great.
credit to
Now
it's
ESPN.
great,
now
straight-
now we're getting
straight
canceled,
from-
Josh. Thanks.
straight from the
This
broadcast.
is straight from ESPN. This clip is from ESPN with the new Adidas Motorsports collection tagged in it
Yeah.
by the order of the Peaky Blinders.
Good,
Toto
yeah.
is like
We just
that.
started this, and now
Do
we're
you,
getting
do you
canceled.
think
Thanks,
Toto
Josh.
was forced to wear that? Do you think somebody was like, "Hey, look, man,
100%.
everyone's hating on the
There is
hats.
no
You got to wear
world
the
in
hat."
which Toto Wolff wears a hat like that,
Yeah,
according to free will.
poor Toto. He's
Yeah.
just
Now, George, I could see George repping that hat any given Sunday. Like, no doubt that hat says George Russell written all over it, but no Toto.
Hey guys, can we just briefly, I mean, just because it breaks my heart, can we briefly just admire Lewis and that streak from 2016 being on the podium in
Yeah.
Silverstone? I mean, is there a better streak than that in modern history when it comes to F1? Not that I can
probably-
think of. And
Max
it's just,
Verstappen winning 23 out of 24 races is mentionable.
yeah, but I mean, it, like one track and just
Okay,
having
yeah.
that success for all those years. I mean, I think the three of us can all admit we didn't see this streak continuing after today. Naturally, we
You
all
had so
thought
much
Yeah.
hope, Paul. I
and
love
hoped
it
and
for you.
prayed.
We wanted it to happen.
And for a while there, I thought it was going to happen. I thought the racing gods were going to bless him with another year, but we knew it was going to end this weekend. And yeah, kudos to him. Great streak. And
You can't
So
argue
sad.
a P4.
I threw a temper tantrum.
You can't argue that. I mean, that's good
No, you
points.
can't,
He
but-
outqualified his teammate, outraced his teammate. Whether that was by, I think
Yeah.
Charles looked really rough. He looked rough today. It
That was
just
bad.
wasn't a good
I
race.
think that was one of Charles's worst weekends in such a long time.
Yeah.
It was really hard to watch. And I think I'm really glad it fell when it did, where we had this break, because I think Charles needs a reset and I think he's going to be reevaluating. And I think if something doesn't change in the way that him and Lewis feel supported by Ferrari, I do think we could potentially see Charles looking elsewhere in the next few seasons.
I think
really
that
feel like we're at that point.
I think that entire team needs to reset these next few weeks to really figure out what's going on because both the drivers are struggling. It's not like we're having one that's podiums the entire time. Granted, Charles has had a few more, but they're both just not there. And we know what happens when mentally you're not there. You're just The whole team just is suffering.
Hey, on a positive note, did anybody see K-Mag in the
Yes,
paddock?
did see him.
Yeah.
K-Mag in the paddock, and he went over to the Haas mobile, whatever the mobile pop-up things. Like, I loved seeing him going and talking to Ayo Katsuma. I loved seeing him go over and congratulate Nico, like rivals turned, friends. I thought that was really cool. So what a cool weekend for K-Mag to become.
And very fitting for K-Mag to be there in Hulk's first
Yep.
podium.
Yeah.
I think if we know anything about that relationship, they started off having a very tumultuous relationship, and those three words that we've all heard, and now from that to this, it's just a full circle relationship, and you just can't help but
Yeah,
love
and
it.
on another positive note, I wanted to bring this up earlier. We were talking about Lando, but kind of forgot the moment he had with his mom at the Parc Ferme, where she was telling him to go enjoy it, and
Just
into
looking
his visor.
into his
The way she
visor.
popped his visor up, I was like, oh, that's such a mom. Like, oh my God, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
And she was wearing all of the bracelets that, so
You
many
have given
fans
her,
had
yeah.
given her. I was
She just looks like
ugh.
such a sweet, wholesome
Hey,
lady.
this was
So that was a nice moment. I'm glad that was captured for them because I'm sure they'll be able to look back at that moment throughout Lando's career and even after. And that's a moment you show Lando's kids one day and say, this is me and your grandma. That's just a great moment to have captured. I just really appreciate it. I thought it was cool.
Hey, this was when I was having my whole ass temper tantrum. But what happened to Lando's face? Did he run into someone? Because I saw that on his nose there was a little blood.
It maybe
His
was
helmet, his crash helmet.
his little thing reopened.
No.
Maybe from a bonk it got reopened. His little incision from King's Day from last year. Who knows?
Yeah, I saw that when I woke up after my nap.
I
Was
didn't see
it
that.
after the podium or was
Uh,
it during like Parc Ferme?
I'll have to get back to you guys on that. I didn't know if you guys had seen it.
I would imagine it was probably just something like maybe a bump or something that reopened his little King's Day little nose. Like I don't know about you guys, but once you have a nose injury, it's really easy to like reopen and re-injure that. It's like very thin skin. So it's like, y'all would probably know this better than me. You're EMTs. So, but nose injuries are very easy to re-injure.
He ran into a
Okay,
photographer.
there you go.
There you go.
I mean, if we're already getting canceled, let's just fucking full on get canceled. But you could see that he was celebrating,
Things
and
turn ugly. More like things turn so joyous that people are so just. You know what? That's
what
a
article was that?
stupid article
That's one
title.
of those like that's
I
got to
don't
be
know.
like a really bad British like tabloid. That's the only way that title gets on there.
Oh, so the photographer falls on him and hits him right in the
Oh no. That's like that IndyCar fall a few weeks ago where Devlin was coming back into the pits and a guy's like running, following him in the pits, trips and falls and just like
Do you see
eats
it?
it.
Do you see Devlin give him the bottle of whiskey or whatever?
Yeah, that was so
Like an "I'm
cool.
sorry I ran you over" kind of thing.
I
You didn't
sent you
run
guys
him
a video.
over. The dude just felt
I think
chasing Devlin
he felt
DiFrancesco.
bad. He felt.
He did.
I sent you guys the video, the news article with the video,
Okay.
so you guys can see. It looked like Lando was trying to get to the barricade, bring it down, and the photographer fell and just hit him.
Poor
All
thing.
right, so as we wrap
Yeah.
up the British Grand Prix, we've got to swing over to Meredith to do our predictions. I'm so excited because I had a great bunch of predictions. So suck it, Paul.
You had a great weekend, Josh. Happy birthday, America. We're celebrating you with Josh's
right.
victory this weekend. So we actually, what's really cool is that we all had faith and belief in Lando. We all predicted
Gotta be
Lando
his
to
home race.
win.
It's gotta happen.
So we all get a point. We all get a point on the board there. And honestly, like everyone in the F1 community, like that's a point on the board for everyone. A home win for any driver
It's
is
so nice.
special. Josh, you had Oscar in P2, Charles in P3, Stroll in points. So you are coming out of this week with 3 points picked up. Paul, you had Lando winning, George in second, Lewis third, V-Carb double points. Out. So you are coming out with 1 point picked up.
I'm starting to be the curse. When I make a prediction, it doesn't happen and it ends terribly. Like
Think
I'm
about
really
that very carefully before Spa then, sir.
these teams are gonna call me and be like, please do not predict us to do anything
Oh
productive.
my God, there's no such thing as bad
Right, that's good.
press.
That's
like,
fine.
let's have them
Fair
call. Okay, I had Lando, Max, Oscar, and then a stake in the points. So I picked up 2 points this weekend. So new point totals, Josh still leading the pack with 9, me with 8, Paul in third with 6 points. So still very close. We have a little silly season break, So time for you to reset, Paul, and we'll have a couple weeks for you to just like mentally prep and like
Okay,
do some reflection.
this is completely off the top of my head. Let's do a wild prediction of what we think is gonna be in just a wild news article that we're going to get in this next couple of weeks? Are we going to get a signing from Cadillac? What wild thing do you think we're going to get in this summer break?
I think
Because
in a silly
you know,
season, yeah, I think in a silly season, we will either get, I think we will either get a Cadillac driver lineup announcement, not necessarily both of them, but
no, you got to pick
maybe
one.
at least
You
one.
can't do multiple. You got to pick one. Is that what you're going with, the Cadillac signing?
It's about time for that. We're getting close.
Yeah, then I'm going Cadillac signing because mine was either Cadillac signing or Alpine swap.
That's the
Yeah.
two. Yeah, those are.
And both of those I think are Botas. So that's like I think we're getting some form. My final answer is I think we're getting a Botas announcement.
Josh, what do you think is going to happen in this
So,
next couple
well,
of
I
weeks?
think that you're right. We are going to get a Botas announcement. It's going to be for Cadillac, and Jack Doohan is going to be the replacement at Alpine. That's my favorite one.
You think they're going to go
Yep,
back to
because
Jack?
Valtteri's not. Why would he go over there? Why would he? If he has the prospect of going over next year, go ahead and start with Cadillac. Start fresh. Why get into the mess that is Alpine right now? That second car is either cursed or it's just why. It's like, why would you go to Red Bull second seat? Like, there's a reason Isaac Hadjar has no interest in going over there, right? So I don't think there's any interest in going to Alpine right now. I get if he had no other prospects for next season, I get it. I get it while he would try to, put himself back out there and make him marketable. But I think he really, with him teasing Cadillac, whether it being just a joke or not, I think that's a really good prospect for him. And I would just be shocked to see him kind of go the route of Alpine right now. So I think they'd go back to Doohan first before. So that's my go. I'm gonna go with Alpine with Jack Doohan.
All right, what's your
All
wild
right.
card, Paul?
I think we're going to get Checo signing with Cadillac.
God,
I
I'm
think
so
that's
excited.
what we're going to get in this crazy couple weeks.
I found the best vintage Tommy Hilfiger sweater the other day while I was out thrifting, and I already told y'all like I plan to be like a huge Cadillac fan. Like I'm gonna go all in. I saw that the Hilfiger Cadillac merch is gonna be dropping soon, so I'm like waiting. But then it's like the day that I got that email, I was like, oh my gosh! I was at the thrift store and I saw perfect condition navy cardigan Hilfiger in white and red letters. So I'm like, so maybe we are manifesting these Cadillac announcements during this break.
Yeah. There'll definitely be something hitting, some breaking news hitting the F1 world. It'll be interesting
Yeah,
to see
and
what
then
happens.
we've also still got the whole Max to Mercedes in the wings and all the fallout that could cause. I mean, who
We
knows?
predicted it. We called it as we recorded. We said it was coming. Something was brewing. We said it.
Yeah.
Yep. So who knows what'll happen because, like you said, silly season. Everybody's trying to get all the moving pieces, settled, the dust settled for 26. Everybody wants to go into 2026 with a clean slate and kind of set how they want to be. They don't want to have any of this madness going on going into the new regulation cycle. So it definitely, like I said, I think it's definitely time that Cadillac kind of narrows it down to give themselves a good half of the season to prepare and get the PR and get everything else that they need to get going to start their campaign. So I think it's high time that they kind of narrow it down. Maybe it'd be Mick Schumacher would be the other person that we haven't really mentioned yet in that seat, but that would be the third outlier option. He was at the track last weekend. Was having conversations with some execs from that program. So we got to just see how that plays out. Before we close out this episode, does anybody have any final thoughts on anything?
Nope. But it was a fun race, fun weekend. Silverstone, much like we said last episode, is always a track that delivers. Once again, it did not disappoint. It just will forever be one of my favorite tracks. It's one that I have to go to. And I loved it, even though it didn't quite go the way we wanted it with Lewis. Nonetheless, great weekend. Loved every minute of it.
Great racing, great result. I'm just happy I made it through the podcast without crying, talking about these victories for Nico and Lando. I'm really proud of myself.
Yep. Yeah, it was a great race. I mean, all three of us agree, and I think most of the drivers do agree with us. Silverstone's one of the best. It's one of the best tracks in the calendar. It's one that everybody's got circled. It's one that we all look forward to. I think we might have wished for a little bit more today with the conditions and, how many laps we lost under the safety car. But at the end of the day, it's always a fun environment. It was so fun seeing the Lando stand and all the fans that were going crazy to see Lando get his first win. So, congratulations to Lando. Winning your home race is always exciting. It's something that people talk about. We still talking about, Charles and Monaco and Lewis and how many times he's won here. So it's always something that's just, it's a special moment. Congratulations, Hulkenberg. Huge deal getting your first podium. Unbelievable. That's, talk about a moment that's been coming for a very long time. 239 race starts. It's about time that he got him one. He deserves it more than most. So.
Yeah, way overdue.
He deserved that one. I'm glad he got it. I was, I saw his daughter cheering him on from home, on the TV. So just a bunch of really cool things. I'm sure that team is going to party real hard tonight. So that'll be fun for them.
And they had to have Mercedes bring the champagne out. They didn't even, in their mobile home, they didn't even have any
Really?
champagne. So the Mercedes team brought over
Uh,
champagne to their motorhome to help them
Yeah,
celebrate.
That's
It's
awesome.
very
What
cool.
what a
yeah,
good
and I
feeling.
think those
Very
stories
cool.
probably happen more often than we think, between teams. I think that, it's nice when those kind of get publicized, but I think little things like that happen probably more regularly than we think. I think, as competitive as Formula One is, I think those teams are really close knit. We got to remember they travel to all these races together. It's all the same people. So I think that there's a lot of really good friendships and connections across team lines that either people have worked with, each other before and gone to a new team, or, whatever the case may be. I think there's a lot of really, really good friendships and stuff like that probably happens. And it's always cool to hear about it from the outside. Yeah, that's really neat. Really good race. Really enjoyed it. Hit us up on social media, especially through this off season. We want to start, still putting out some content, but it gives us a good opportunity to kind of bring you some different content while we have a little bit of a break. So if you have any suggestions on things you'd like to talk about or, learn about, give us some suggestions. We're open to anything, whether it be technical, social, any kind of research that we can do to, present to the listeners. Reach out to us on the TikTok, on Instagram, email us. I don't care what it is. Just reach out and interact with us. We'll get back with you. We like responding to comments and DMs and everything else. So hit us up if there's anything you want us to talk about before we come back into the second half of this 2025 season. So with that, it's been another great episode. We'll see you guys in between now and the next race for sure, but we'll come up with something to talk about. Maybe silly season will hit early and we'll have plenty of content, so we never know.
No
But until
doubt.
then, we'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Absolutely, guys. Take care.